Hey everyone, there is a pretty big change in the meta in TFT right now because there was a B patch and they essentially nerfed Blackrose, Scrap, Mundo, Firelight, and also buffed Family and Rebel. Now this is very important because you need to know that Blackrose is still good, it's the best comp, but Family has this weird tech where it's like pretty much guaranteed top 3 in my opinion, which also makes it very, very good. Assuming you hit, obviously. And there are also some other comps such as Verticals and one reroll comp in Camille. So we're gonna go over the most important changes. This is gonna be a shorter video compared to the other meta snapshots that I do in the past where I explain literally every single comp. I'm just gonna focus on the main ones you need to know right now to play. So first things first, S tier, Blackrose is still the best comp. It's not super broken anymore, but it's still the best. Family Violet, we're going to talk about that in a bit. As for Verticals, Enforcer's really good, Rebel's really good, Scrap is good, Visionary's good, though you don't need the emblem for Visionary, and then Zoe's also really good in Sorcerer. After that, we have Heimerdinger Flex, very good comp. Ironically, Heimerdinger also is played in the Blackrose comp, but Heimerdinger Flex is more between like Sentinel and Academy. And then we have Ambusher, Camille, and Smeech as the best reroll comp. Kogmaw, Scar reroll, it did get nerfed a bit, but it's still very good. You just need to get the right spots for it because 3-cost reroll is a bit more difficult to play. Some other special mention comps is going to be Bruiser Mundo. That one's really fun to do. And also like Twitch dropped down a bunch because Mundo did get worse. I'm having Twitch between like on the cusp of A and B tier right now, like A minus B plus, somewhere around there. Let's get into how to play each and every one of the top comps. We're going to skip Blackrose for now. We're going to start off with Family because I think this one's the most important. So what you want to do is get Violet 3-star before the anomaly round, which is on stage 4-6. And then you roll until you can get the anomaly that makes her into a 4-star unit. It's called Ultimate Hero, and it essentially just stars up your 1-cost unit into a 4-star. And Violet is an absolute monster with that. If you ever get like a good Ornn item on her, it's even better. But I think getting like a super bruiser tank build is really good. Sterax, Bloodthirster, Titans, nothing too crazy there. Edge of Knight's also good, but I prefer having this combo because she's so tanky. She doesn't really die until like the super late game. But you play her, you play the base family board, and then you add in pit fighters. Let me show you what the base family board is. It's just going to be what you see here minus these units. So this is the core 5. You play this for most of the game because I am going to be honest, you are going to be level 5 or 6 until stage 5 because you just need Violet 3. You also want Vander 3. You could put Thieves Gloves, you could put tank items on him, either or work, but the main star of the show is going to be Violet. On Draven, just put like attack speed and attack damage items on him. You want a Last Whisper effect somewhere in the comp, so either put Last Whisper on Draven or put an Even Shroud on your Vander, and it's pretty much guaranteed top 3. I wish I was kidding when I said that. So unless something really stupid happens or if someone hits an absolutely insane board, in terms of consistency of being able to hit this board and how strong it is, it's very good. But yeah, essentially, if you have 60 gold or more on the anomaly round, you can guarantee getting Violet 4-star because there are around 60 anomalies and each reroll costs 1 gold. So you literally can just hard force this. So I recommend doing that for Family. Let's move on into Blackrose now, which is the other comp. This one's pretty simple because we talked about it a lot last week, but the best version right now is going to be the Heimerdinger version. 5 Blackrose, 4 Visionary, and you just play the board you see on this screen right now. I like to actually use my anomaly on Malzahar. Whether you use Malzahar or Heimerdinger, it honestly doesn't matter too much, but 1-star Malzahar is an absolute monster. Just make sure you have a bunch of mana items for your team. Main tank's going to be Elise, or I guess technically your main tank is Scion, but the main tank you put items on is Elise. And you could just throw any tank item on her, it doesn't really matter. You don't really need the magic shred if you have Malzahar. Malzahar does a 20% magic shred. Ionic Spark and Static Shiv do 30%, so having the item does help, but if you have a Malzahar, it's not completely required. But you may have noticed there are a lot of legendaries in this comp. We have Malzahar, LeBlanc, Jace. You could run a few others in here too, and that essentially means this is going to be a fast 9 comp. So do whatever is in your power to get to level 9 and roll for the 1-star legendaries because 1-star Malzahar stabilizes your board so hard. 1-star LeBlanc, same thing, and it's worth more than having a 2-star Heimerdinger in a lot of cases. But Heimer's still good. Other carries you could use in the backline is Elise or Zoe. If you do Zoe, you do more of a Sorcerer build. If you do Elise, you could kind of run anything because she's a Blackrose unit, so you could just throw in whatever. But the main core of the comp in the early to mid game, let's remove the Malzahar, let's remove the LeBlanc, the Heimer, the Jace, the Elise. It's pretty much just going to look something like this. You have some of the other like random Visionary units such as like Vex, Renata, or Rel, any combination of those to get to 4 Visionary early on. You could use Vex or Morgana as your item holder. And then you could also run some Watchers. Scar is really good because he gives a bunch of CC. Some Sorcerers are good to hold on to if you want to use them as an item holder, because you just need any AP item holder in the backline, so that could be something like Nami. And then you eventually get into the board we saw before. But yeah, pretty simple stuff. Just flex between the carries. There's also a Silco version here. I didn't want to have too many images up because then it kind of blocks through everything. But just know that like his recommended items are down in the item section. All right, next comp up we have is Enforcer Caitlyn Vi. Only play this if you have the Enforcer emblem. But the new comp we have up is going to be Heimerdinger Flex. So Heimerdinger Flex is pretty interesting because we talked about this a little bit before. 5 Academy, 4 Sentinel is pretty good, but there is a version with 6 Sentinel, but only play this if you have Rumble. I added a nice little handy feature in the tier list on the website bunnymuffins.lol. You just click this link, it takes you to a data explorer, and you could essentially see how good certain things are. So if we type in Heimerdinger and then we look at his traits, we'll see that 6 Sentinel does really well, 3.56. Blackrose, 3.2, very nice. But of course, that's the other comp from before. And we could also type in like Academy to see how Academy does. Academy does pretty decently. But let's pay attention to Sentinel because I think this is the most important thing. It might seem like a no-brainer to go for 6 Sentinel because it's averaging a 3.56 and his average placement is 3.89. So obviously this makes it better, right? But one key thing to keep in mind is that this only works with Rumble. If you run 6 Sentinel without Rumble, it ends up not being that great. You could see that with 6 Sentinel, Rumble, and Heimerdinger, the average placement is 3.26. It goes to 5.04. This is not a typo. Nothing weird's going on. But essentially, if you run 6 Sentinels, but you're running like Leona, Alawi, Rel, Irelia, and Loris, even if you have Sentinel Emblem, like we could add Sentinel Emblem in here too, right? It's still going to do very badly. So you can pretty much only play the 6 Sentinel version if you get a Rumble. So don't even try it without it. Play like the 4 Sentinel, more Academy version instead. The great thing about the Academy build is that the units are really cheap. Like you're running Lux. Ezreal's pretty cheap too, but you have to make sure you can actually make use of the Academy items. So the way to check for Academy items is just to hover over the Academy trait every game and you'll see what items are going to come up if you add more and more Academy units. But one thing to keep in mind there, because I know there's a 6 Sentinel build going around, but it pretty much only works if you have Rumble. And there are 7 Sentinel units, so like you end up running like Singed or something. I think it's like Singed and Loris is what's missing here, and that's just not going to cut it. But that's the most important thing to note about the Heimer Flex comp. Other than that, it's just standard fast 8 as we covered in the previous video. Camille and Smeech is going to be the new kid on the block. This is an Ambusher build, and Ambusher is very strong if you get Ambusher Spatula, but you don't need it. You could just go regular Camille reroll, just play the 5 Ambushers, and then hit Jinx later on. Just make sure you play aggressively with this comp because it does fall off in the late game, but 3-star Camille, very powerful, especially with Anomaly to buffer up even more, but Smeech also does hold his own quite a bit. He's just more difficult to 3-star, so it's a bit risky to use your Anomaly on Smeech because if he's 2-star 3 costs, like, yeah, not gonna cut it. But if you can guarantee him 3-star 3 costs, like, sure, like use your Anomaly on him, he will carry also. But there are a couple weird things you could do with this comp. Leona 3-star is optional. You do need some sort of tank. It could be like Garen, it could be Loris, depending on who you hit, but 3-star Leona is good sometimes, but only if you get her for free as you're rolling for Camille. Other than that, other people you can itemize is Echo. Jinx kind of not that great, even though she is a legendary, but if everyone else is full on items, you could drop some items on Jinx. I think the most important thing on Jinx is getting mana items on her so that you get her 3rd cast, which is like that huge explosion across the board. So getting a Spear of Shojin on Jinx, definitely very valuable. Another thing to keep in mind with this build is that you don't need Infinity Edge or Jeweled Gauntlet because you get crit from Ambusher. So building stuff like Hand of Justice is really valuable, or like a Guard Breaker, things like that. Quicksilver, but overall solid comp, just like 2-cost reroll. You can find more details on the website bunnymuffins.lol. Oh, by the way, another thing you could do is if you want to get easy access to all of these comps in the team planner in game, because I always say to use a team planner, right? You could press this copy code button over here and then just paste the team, and then you can name it like Camille Ambusher, press confirm, and then it is going to be in there, and you could use it in your like next game. And you could set up your whole team planner with like all the comps if you really want to, so that you could access them in game and things like that. You could even add extra units to them. If you have like a nice flex unit you want to add in, you should maybe drop in like a, I don't know, like whoever you want, right? And that way you could fill out all the slots on the team planner, but it's not too like important there, but it's a nice little handy feature on this team builder. Next comp I want to talk about is going to be Rebel Zoe, because this got buffed a bunch. Nothing too crazy going on here. You just need the Rebel emblem, and if you get that, you could play the 7 Rebel comp. I don't recommend playing this without the Rebel emblem. It's pretty mediocre or even bad otherwise. And the reason why is because like getting the emblem means you get the 7 Rebel spike a little bit faster. You're not as reliant on hitting the expensive units. And also once you do hit like Jinx and stuff like that, you don't have to play some like crappy 1 or 2 cost unit on your team because you have the emblem. It's essentially like a tactician's crown, you know, it's like that's how good it is. We don't really need to talk about Kogmaw that much. We did that a couple days ago. I do want to talk a little bit about Scrap Corki. So oddly enough, for a vertical comp, Scrap Emblem is not required at all in this build, which makes this the hard force comp of the week. So I talked a little bit about that in the little summary over here. In this bottom section, I list out comps I recommend for like one tricking, Exodia comps, and like beginner comps. So right now for beginner comps, I think Reroll Camille is pretty easy to play, and also any of the emblem comps. So if you want to do Rebel Zoe, if you get the emblem for it, Enforcer Vi, same thing, but again, only if you get the emblem for it. Very easy comp to play for beginners if you get the augment early on. But the comp to one trick right now, I think is going to be Scrap Corki, because you don't need any emblem to play this build. And if you get bad items, you could always just drop components on all your scrap units. So it's pretty much the hard force comp of this patch, similar to the Callista build of last set, if anyone remembers that. The comp is pretty much just Corki main damage dealer, Elise main tank, and then Echo secondary carry. And I think the most interesting thing to think about right now is Elise itemization. A lot of people are putting pure tank items on Elise, but I think that's actually a mistake. I think you should use the mana items on Elise, such as Protector's Vow and Adaptive Helm, similar to how people built Tahm Kench in the last set, because they essentially do the same thing. But ideally, you get all your damage items on Corki. Maybe even instead of the Warmogs on Elise, you put in like an Even Shroud, and then you could save that last Whisper for a different item. Oh no, what should we put on it? Well, we could use the Explorer tool. We get the 6 scrap, put in Corki, check out Elise, put the Even Shroud on Elise, typing it in like this, and then we could see what items to build on Corki. So I could press this little button over here to toggle between like items on specific champions versus general items. So you'll see that IE is good, sword or bow is pretty good, Giant Slayer, Shojin actually not that good, so don't build Shojin on Corki. Last Whisper ironically isn't too bad with the Even Shroud, but you could build stuff like Rage Blade, Red Buff not bad, Death Blade pretty good. So maybe IE plus Deathblade might be my go-to combo, or an IE Giant Slayer if it's going to be in the late game. But pretty much this other item is Flex, which is a great thing about this comp. So you really just need the IE on your Corki and then a random sword component. But pretty useful stuff there. Another note I want to make about this comp is that Alawi is like the extra Flex unit. At level 8, this is what your board's going to look like. Elise is going to be your main tank. Even though Alawi is a better tank unit than Elise in terms of like how much damage they can absorb, you don't play Alawi until you get Rumble. And because Rumble is a legendary unit, it's kind of harder to get to. And before that, you play something like Ziggs to get to 6 scrap really quickly. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. But again, it's like a great hard force comp. I don't think it's as good as Fairy Callista, but it's as like flexible as it right now. Next comp I want to cover, because we already went over a lot of these in the last video, is going to be the Bruiser Mundo build. I think this build is super good right now, but you can only play it with Bruiser Emblem, unfortunately. So if you do get Bruiser Emblem in the early game, I highly recommend trying out this comp. You just play Twitch Mundo plus a bunch of Bruisers, and then you get Nunu, who's also an experiment and Bruiser, and then you just drop a bunch of tank items on Mundo, make Mundo your anomaly unit, and then he just never dies. Make Twitch sort of like a utility backline unit. I mean, he still does damage, right? But you drop the red buff on him so that he applies anti-heal to everyone, and then everyone slowly burns down. It's really fun, really powerful also. Highly recommend this build. Also very easy to play, but essentially you just play 6 Bruisers plus Twitch, and then that's 7 units, right? After that, you want to add in a Dominator such as Silco if you want to buff up Mundo, but if you have a strong Twitch, then you add in a Sniper. Obviously, Caitlyn's going to be the best one because she's a 5 cost unit. But super fun comp to play. It's just a generic like beefy frontline plus a backline carry type of comp. Next comp up we have is Emissary Ambessa. I did not add the Emissary build until now, so I want to talk about it a little bit. This build is kind of reminding me of like that Fiora Gwen build in a way, in that you run a lot of different 4-cost units, but I think it's not as flexible as that other comp, because the Fiora Gwen build was able to use AP and AD items and backline items, whereas this one is more so like all AD items, because you have like Ambessa, Corki as your 2 main carries, Garen as the main tank, and then Vi as like a tertiary carry if you have too many items. But this comp works really well if you get a lot of items. Also really good in a fast 8 because you need so many 4 costs. So one tricky part about this is that the Emissary trait only works if you have 1 or 4 emissaries active. So this means that you absolutely need both Garen and Ambessa, if not the comp doesn't work. So you need to play this on a game where you have like a ton of gold, where you're able to fast 8 with 50 gold to roll down with, or just be confident enough in your abilities to not lose the game before you hit 4 emissary. And then once you get that, you just play this comp out like this. Corki's a really good carry to add in because Tristana, who's also an emissary, is an artillerist, so the best carry for that is going to be Corki. But maybe there's a way to drop in a Zoe here. Maybe you play it with the Nami, take out Swain for something else. Perhaps that's how some people can use the AP items, but I think Corki's the best. Again, you could check in the Explorer which units kind of perform better. We could see like Corki, who's at a 3.84, and Zoe 4.26. Yeah, like you're probably playing Corki, right? You could also check out the trait section to see what traits do really well on it. And in here, you could kind of see which traits kind of work the best with the 4 emissary build. But just to summarize at the top, Blackrose still OP, family completely bonkers nuts if you get the 4-star Violet. Honestly, you could probably one-trick it. Nah, if you're contested, it's hard to hit 4-star Violet. But also, like, scrap Corki. If you want to play only one comp for the entire patch, this patch is going to be like a 3-week patch, then yeah, scrap Corki is going to be the way to go. But let me know if you have questions down in the comments below. Hopefully this video helps you out. I know we had like multiple videos right now, but that's just because of the B patch. So I always want to keep you all updated. If you have any questions, again, comments below or Discord, just type it in the general or TFT chat. And that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Let me know what you want to see in the future, and I'll see you all next time.